All right, and welcome to another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast Patreon exclusive content. I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and once again, it's nice to have you guys. So we just got wrapped up streaming the show. Good show as always. We talked about the latest headlines around the league, talked about the Baltimore Orioles and their success that they are having this year. We went through the AL West standings and talked about, where that currently stands, how some of the games went last night, and then we went in and talked about the NL Wildcard race. So, and those are the two races that are the most enticing right now. And also you got the AL East and the AL Wildcard race as well. But I think it's just because you got three teams fighting for first place, and they're also fighting for the wild card spot in the American League too. And then you got the National League where you got 4 or 5 teams battling it out for 2 spots. So, but the AL East, it's between the Rays and the Orioles, it's gonna be very close. So, but yeah, it was a great show. And giving the Orioles the love that they deserve because, they they deserve it. I mean, they have had a very good year. They've had some rough years in between that, and it wasn't easy for their fans. They stuck with them though, and now they got a really good team, a really good young team that could go very far in the playoffs. And the sky's the limit on what they can do. And I talked about on the show, the starting pitching is probably the one concern that I have with them. Their lineup is very good. The bullpen is very good, top 5 in baseball. So it's the starting pitching. And it's about, bridging the gap to get to your bullpen. But they do have starters that have been good, that have won a lot of games. The ERAs are a little high because I was looking at them. You got Dean Kramer, who's got an ERA over 4. Kyle Gibson, his is at 5, I believe. So you got a lot of you got a little bit of issues with starting pitching. Also, Jack Flaherty hasn't been the best since he's come over, but Bradish has been good. And like I said, Kramer's won games, and Gibson's got wins as well. So they've won, but it's a credit to the lineup and how they've done. So, we'll see how and we got to see how the matchups are in the playoffs too. So it's like who's going to be their game 1 starter. That remains to be seen. And also Felix Bautista, their closer, is working his way back from an injury. So, if you're an Orioles fan, you're hoping you get him back because he's been very good with Cano as well. Those 2 guys at the back of the bullpen. And that's the strength of their team. And that's, a big part of winning a championship. And you've seen it. The Astros have had good bullpens over the years. The Braves have good bullpens. The Dodgers, the Royals. I mean, I go back to the Royals because the Royals, similar, I guess I would say similar to the Orioles where, their starters weren't the best. They would rely heavily on their bullpen, and that's why they won their World Series. Because I remember they went out, they traded for Johnny Cueto. I think they had Edison Volquez. They had Chris Young. I think he was also on that team. There's the other thing is there's 2 Chris Youngs. There's the one that was a position player, and then there's one that was the pitcher. They had him as well. So their starting pitching wasn't the best, but the reason why a big part of why they won is because of their bullpen and how good their bullpen was. That's really what it's going to come down to with the Orioles. And, playoffs are different in the sense that, if your starter's not pitching well, you pull them very early, in some aspects. It depends on the situation you're in. I mean, in a winner-go-home game, that's where it really comes into play. Because I remember going to the 2017 wildcard game, and the Yankees were down 3-0 against the Twins, and Luis Severino only recorded one out. They were down 3-0, and Joe Girardi pulled him. They put in Chad Green, and it was a bullpen game the rest of the way. And the Yankees ended up winning. But it's the kind of urgency that you need to have in these games, because if your starter's not pitching good, then you got to make sure you take him out. Because, I mean, obviously in an elimination game, there's more urgency with that, but there's definitely shorter leashes going into the playoffs, because these games are so important, and you got to win. That's the objective. So, but the other thing too is, and this is something that I have talked about with the Rays, is they rely so heavily on their bullpen that throughout the season especially, that when they get to the playoffs, then that's when like the bullpen falls apart, because they're just so gassed from being overused. And that's why that's one of the things to not like about baseball today is when you're starting to see more of you're starting to see less of the traditional starting pitcher, and how that might become extinct at one point, because at some point you might have a guy that's only going to pitch 4 or 5 innings, and then the rest of the game you're using your bullpen. And I feel like and I understand that, because you don't want guys getting hurt and things like that. That's one of the things you're worried about, injuries, but you need a starting pitcher that can go 7 innings, 6-7 innings, because you don't want your bullpen being gassed. And I feel like I don't understand. I mean, in some respects I can understand, but I don't know why we're kind of moving away from the traditional starting pitcher, because you get to the playoffs and your bullpen's gassed and they're not as effective, and then that leads to you getting knocked out. And I feel like the Rays are one of those teams that's happened to. That's why you got to have starting pitchers that can give you length to save your bullpen. And for some of these teams, you got guys that aren't going to go 6-7 innings. And that's going to lead to the bullpen being overused, and that could lead to your downfall in these big games in the playoffs. But listen, one of the big reasons why a lot of these teams have won over the last several years is because of their bullpens. And you look at like the 2018 Red Sox. I mean, their bullpen wasn't, I don't think, the greatest, but it was definitely, solid. And, they had Kimbrel closing out games for them, who's one of the best closers ever. So, but the reason why they won is more so because their starting lineup was insane that year. And David Price had a great postseason. You had Chris Sale, Evaldi, but I just go back to, you talk about like the Royals the Royals had a very good lineup, but the 2018 Red Sox, that might be that was one of the best teams that I've seen in my lifetime, really. I mean, the lineup up and down was just incredible. But you just think back to the Royals, because that was something that everybody talked about, was their bullpen. And the Orioles have that bullpen. They have a good bullpen. So that, combined with a good lineup and starters that can just, manage the game, get through 5 innings and send it over to them, bridge the gap, that's a recipe for success. And it just all depends on who they play. I think that whoever they end up playing in the first round, that would be my pick to move on to the championship series. I think right now, I would say I would pick them to be in the championship series at the moment. But that all depends on who they play. And it's different. I guess it's different because you have, you look in the National League, the Braves, whoever they're going to play, in the first round, I think they should definitely win. Because now when you look at the American League, I mean, the Orioles are either going to play, because the Braves are either going to play, well, the Marlins just swept them. So you don't want to discount them. But the Braves, I think this is the year they're going to get back to the World Series. But you look at the Orioles, I think the competition is going to be tougher for them as opposed to and again, they haven't locked up the division yet, so the Rays could end up being the top team in the American League. But you look at the Braves, they could end up playing, one of these teams, like the Cubs, the Marlins, the Reds, the Giants. I mean, I feel like the Braves, they're in a class of their own. I think they should be able to win that series, whoever they end up playing. But then you got the Orioles, and they're going to be playing either the Blue Jays, the Mariners, or the Rangers. And those teams have very good lineups, and they got guys in their pitching staff that are very good. I mean, because you got the Mariners with Luis Castillo. The Rangers, you got Evaldi, you got Montgomery, but, they don't have like that ace. I mean, even though Evaldi was, a Cy Young candidate at one point during the year, but so he's probably going to be the guy that would start. Well, shouldn't say he's going to start game one, because if he's playing, I mean, they could win the division, they could be playing in the wild card round, who knows? Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It all depends on pitching matchups too. How that's all set up. But all those teams have very good lineups. So I think it's going to be tougher for the Orioles as opposed to the Braves, depending on what wild card team they end up playing. But I think the Orioles are going to go to the championship series. I think we could see that, because based off of how they've played, also recently against the Astros, winning 2 games, the first 2 games of the series against the Astros, I've been impressed, and this team's legit. They might win 100 games this year. So, but I think their level of competition with whatever wild card team they face is going to be tougher than who the Braves end up going against. But also because the Braves are the best team in baseball. And also, can the Braves get knocked off again? Is that possible? It definitely is. I don't think it's going to happen in the first round, because then they're going to end up playing. I think it's going to end up being Braves-Dodgers in the championship series. But we'll see. I mean, the Phillies have something to say about that. And again, one of these wild card teams could get hot, and then it doesn't really matter, So we're just gonna have to wait and see. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm really looking forward to the postseason. I want to see how I gotta get a feel of how these teams are, in the postseason. Because the wild card round is gonna be, it's gonna be crazy. It is gonna be crazy. And I actually do prefer this over the 1-game playoff, because, and again, it's a little bit of a bias just because my team played in it so many times. They played in it 4 times. They played in it 4 times. They lost the first one, which I was there in person. They won the second one, which I was also there in person. Then they won the following year. They beat the A's, and then they lost to the Red Sox in 21. And then that's when they added the wild card series, and they did this during COVID, and of course that gave them the idea of, hey, let's make it a thing now. And listen, I'm okay with it, but I do understand when some people complain that there's too many teams, and some of these teams might not necessarily deserve to make the playoffs. But yeah, but you know what? It makes it for more exciting. But look at the Phillies. Phillies were playing the Cardinals last year. They weren't the favorites going into that series, and they ended up taking 2 out of 3. First 2 games, they swept them. And they beat the Braves, they beat the Padres. I mean, they were underdogs pretty much in every series. I think most people Well, people took the Braves most certainly. I think most people probably lean towards the Padres, but yeah, the Phillies just they hung tough and they made it all the way to the World Series, and they lost a tough series to the Astros. Where if a few things go their way, maybe they're the team that's hoisting the trophy. But yeah, so a team like that could come out of the wild card round. I mean, even in the wild card game, you had the Royals, who were a wild card team in 2014. They made it to the World Series. So it's really all about momentum and how you're playing at a certain point in time. And if a team gets hot in the wild card round and they carry that momentum into the next series against the better teams that have byes, you never know. You never know. That's why baseball is one of those sports that it's really unpredictable on making predictions, because you can't predict some of these things that have happened over the years, So, listen, I think the Braves should get to the World Series based off of how well they've been this year. Their pitching, Max Fried, who I haven't really mentioned. I think this is the first time I'm mentioning his name because you're thinking of Spencer Strider, who's going for the Cy Young, but yeah, you got the starting pitching is good. The lineup with all those guys, Albies and Acuna and Matt Olson having MVP seasons. I mean, Austin Riley, the team is just loaded top to bottom, and that they should get to the World Series. But listen, something can happen along the way and derail that, and then they find themselves going home. But I don't know. I really don't know, because you thought last year might be the year, and then the Phillies knocked them out. This year, I mean, I don't know. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. I really don't know. I really don't know what to expect. I don't know because things always happen that you don't expect. So, but yeah, and then the division races. I think the Orioles hold on and knock off the Rays, and they clinch the division. The AL West is very tough because you got three teams that are a half a game separates them, and two of those teams are both a half game back. You got the Rangers and the Mariners both a half game back, and all these teams are playing each other. It's coming up. Rangers and Mariners are playing each other, and that's going to determine a lot. Astros play the Mariners one more time in Seattle. And that really, all of that is going to determine on who gets the division, who gets the wild card spots. And then sprinkled in there is the Blue Jays. And the Blue Jays, they play the Rays, and they're playing the Yankees. They're playing the Yankees right now 5 more times after last night. I mean, they won 7-1 in a snooze fest if you're a Yankee fan. A Blue Jays fan, you got to be thrilled. I think the Blue Jays, they should take the series against the Yankees, and I think they probably take 4 out of the 6 at least. I'm not going to say the Yankees are going to get swept, but I think the Yankees are kind of just like get to the end of the year. It's it stinks. As a Yankee fan, it stinks. But I know for fans that don't like the Yankees, they are basking in glory because of how bad the Yankees have been this year. And Yankees still they could still not finish over 500, and that would be the first time in my lifetime that that's ever happened. And I got to be honest, I never thought that would happen. I never thought in all my years of in my 23 years of being on this planet that I really it never occurred to me that the Yankees would ever finish under 500. I mean, it would happen at some point. You just don't think about it. But it's definitely possible. I'm hoping it doesn't. And I know, like, listening to sports talk radio, It's like Yankee fans. Is that what it's come to? You're hoping that the team doesn't finish under 500. Are you going to celebrate that? I'm not going to celebrate it, but I'd rather them finish over 500 than finish under 500. But then people say, well, if they do finish under 500, maybe actual changes are not coming in terms of manager, general manager. That's staying the same. Yeah, I've kind of been. I really like when Dominguez was playing and hitting all those home runs. That's when I started tuning in again. And then it's like, hey, if this and this happens, maybe they. And I would watch the games, but I wouldn't pay close attention like I had earlier in the season. I mean, they really just kind of turned me off after that really bad stretch they had while I was on vacation in August. That's when they went on that 9-game losing streak. Because I was away for a week and a half, and they won. They didn't play the game that when we first got to where we were staying. The next day, the first full day of vacation, they won, and then every game after that, and games when we came home, they lost, and that was that losing streak. And it was funny because I remember in 21, from the time we got home from our vacation to the time that I went back to school, that was when they went on that 2-week winning streak, and that kind of inflated their record because 2021 was another down year for them, but they still ended up winning 92 games. And I was kind of hoping for the same thing here. The problem is they didn't have an Anthony Rizzo, Joey Gallo trade deadline. It was just let's get a reliever who ended up getting hurt. Oh, dog scared me again. Oh man, I don't. What I don't understand? Like she hears things. And you're just like, what are you doing? It's whatever. But yeah, so, and it'll eventually stop. I'd like to get in the mind of what she's thinking, because what is she hearing that she reacts like that? I don't even know. But yeah, that's a part of the show, is the dog barking. And then she goes and she lays right outside my door. So I have no idea. But yeah, if you guys heard that, it was like the first bark was like a very weak bark. And then all of a sudden, but you forget she's there. I honestly thought she was downstairs, but no. But she's she's waiting to come in here because when now people back to work and school, not everybody in the house is home. So she she tries to, be with someone that is here. And like I said, I'd love to have her in here. I don't know if she's going to stay still the whole time, so I don't want to risk that. But still, she ends up scaring me when she just barks for no reason. But it is what it is with that. But yeah, yeah. So you got to see me have that jump scare just now. Yeah, and I don't even remember. I was talking about the Yankees, whatever. I haven't really paid a close attention to them, and playing the Blue Jays, who are actually playing for something. It's just, I mean, listen, Garrett Cole's pitching tomorrow, so hopefully he pitches well, and that cements him as the Cy Young, because one slip up, you got Luis Castillo right behind you. And Garrett Cole, he's got his ERA under 3. So you would like for that to stay the same. And yeah, so we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm at least hoping that he can win. So at least if the Yankees can finish over 500 and Garrett Cole gets the Cy Young, I mean, at least those two things you could be like, yeah, all right. We'll take. I mean, the Garrett Cole thing you want just because, he deserves it. The over 500 thing, I mean, that's just because you don't want something that's been happening for your entire lifetime to end. But maybe this is the year that it's supposed to. And I had the Yankees winning 97 games because I figured, Judge was going to be healthy the whole year. You figured the pitching was going to be good. I didn't expect a lot of guys to underperform. But, I mean, I did kind of discount injuries a little bit. Because, you know what? Because I fell in the trap of the team, when they get hurt, they still find a way to figure it out and play well. Well, I knew injuries were going to happen, but I don't think I didn't expect Aaron Judge to run into a wall and hurt his toe and miss 2 months. I didn't expect that. And I expected them to make moves at the trade deadline, and they really didn't. They just traded for a relief pitcher. They actually traded for two, and one of them I think they put on waivers. So, and the relief pitcher Kenyon Middleton actually wasn't that bad, but I expected the Yankees to do more. They should have brought up the young guys sooner, but for whatever reason they decided to do what they did, and yeah, this is the kind of season that they've been having. So, it stinks. But you guys can for people that don't like the Yankees, like I said, you can make fun of me for having all the Yankee stuff in the background. I'll still be a fan. I'll be there next year. I'll be watching next year. I'll be at a game. I went to 3 this year, and it was like right before the trade deadline. Or no, it was actually right after the trade deadline. And they didn't do anything. I went to 3 games in 1 week, and with different people. That's just how it lined up. And the first game was when the night of the trade deadline ending, and they did nothing other than getting Middleton and the other reliever. And then they lost that game. And then they won the next 2 I went to. I was there the following night against the Rays. They won, and then they won against Verlander when I think his first start back with the Astros. And I was like, hey, maybe this is where they turned it around. And was I wrong? I was very wrong. So, but yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back. I'll be watching. I'll be back at the games. So, but yeah, that's basically it for another edition of the Patreon exclusive content. So make sure to check out all the shows, catch up on things that you might have missed on both YouTube channels. I appreciate you guys for watching. And as always, like I said, leave a comment, like, subscribe to our videos on YouTube. We greatly appreciate it. And yeah, that's basically it for today. So I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off from the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys again tomorrow. So until then, take care, and I'll see you then.